Hello and welcome to the video lecture 2 of Module 12 of the Introduction to New Music online course. For a little while, let's take a step back, really back to the 19th century. Maybe not very many of you have heard of Lady Ada Lovelace, daughter of the Romantic poet Lord Byron. Lady Lovelace is known as the first computer scientist from her work with the mathematician Charles Babbage on the Babbage's analytical engine. Her published notes on this seminal general-purpose computer included what is referred to as the first algorithms of computer programs. She also envisioned potential uses of the analytical engine beyond pure mechanical calculations, for example, music. The engine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity or extent, she said. This is why Ada Lovelace is also considered an influential figure in 20th century computer music. Large-scale institutes such as IRCAM and ZKM are in the forefront of electroacoustic music and audio technology today, linking with both the elite conception of art, research and transmission and the dissemination of knowledge and creativity to larger audiences. But what were the steps from institutionalization to the digital revolution and democratization of musical technology through the development of personal computers and accessible software? It is generally asserted that the digital revolution of the 1980s was a product of industrial innovation in pursuit of commercialism and profits. Thus, as Richard Taruskin has succinctly put it, created by capitalism, it can stand, therefore, as a musical monument to the global triumph of the free market and the worldwide conversion to an information-based economy. The first step was the standardization of MIDI in 1983. MIDI is an acronym that stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It's a way to connect devices that make and control sound, such as synthesizers, samplers and computers, so that they can communicate with each other using MIDI messages. This lets one keyboard trigger sounds on another synthesizer, and it makes it possible to record music in a form that allows for easy note editing, flexible orchestration and song arrangement. Visual instruments, computer programs that simulate hardware synthesizers and samplers, also communicate with computer sequencing software running on the same computer using MIDI messages. MIDI evolved as a standard to enable communication between the more compact and affordable synthesizers that were available in the early 1980s after the era of large, expensive modular analog synthesizers. Formerly, such connections between instruments were not standardized, so incompatibilities were common. The MIDI standard was completed in 1983 by a consortium of musical equipment manufacturers, including Korg, Oberheim, Roland, Sequential Circuits and Yamaha. Products featuring the standard, such as the popular Yamaha DX7, were on the market soon after. Before long, sequencing software for personal computers could take advantage of the MIDI communications protocol to let users record, store and edit music, as well as manage large collections of synthesizer sounds. Using MIDI, a single controller, often a keyboard as pictured here, can play multiple instruments, which increases the portability of stage setups. This system fits into a single rack case, but prior to the advent of MIDI, it would have required 4 separate full-size keyboard instruments plus outboard mixing and effects units. Too much equipment. MIDI's appeal was initially limited to professional musicians and record producers who wanted to use electronic instruments in the production of popular music. The standard allowed different instruments to communicate with each other and with computers, and this spurred a rapid expansion of the sales and production of electronic instruments and music software. This interoperability allowed one device to be controlled from another, which reduced the amount of hardware musicians needed. MIDI's introduction coincided with the dawn of the personal computer era and the introductions of samplers and digital synthesizers. It also helped the establishment of home recording and also educational technology. MIDI has transformed music education both in universities and institutions and in online platforms worldwide. Then there came the sampler. Samplers are digital audio recorders that create small wave samples and map them to the keyboard device. Samplers can record any natural sound with an attached microphone, which may then be converted and used as a waveform sample. Generally, a sampler device uses sound recordings, samples, of real instrument sounds, for example a piano, a violin, a trumpet, excerpts from recorded songs or other sounds such as sirens and ocean waves, for example. The samples are loaded or recorded by the user or by a manufacturer. These sounds are then played back by means of the sampler program itself, a MIDI keyboard, sequencer or another triggering device to perform or compose music. Because these samples are usually stored in digital memory, the information can be quickly accessed. A single sample may often be pitch shifted to different pitches to produce musical scales and chords. Often samplers offer filters, effects units, modulation via low-frequency oscillation, and other synthesizer-like processes that allow the original sound to be modified in many different ways: transposition, compression, elongation, looping, or reversal. Most samplers can play back different sounds simultaneously and are able to play more than one note at the same time. The 21st century's music workstation technology usually uses sampling as the mainstay of modern sound effects production. Using digital techniques, various effects can be pitch shifted and otherwise altered in ways that would have required many hours when done with tape, and again, in an affordable price. Just between 1980 and 1984, the price of a sampler capable of such operations fell from about $25,000 to $1,300, making the creation of home studios possible from audio engineers to young composers, musicians, and students. MIDI and sampler were complemented by the sequencer, a software application or a digital electronic device that can record, save, play, and edit audio files. The audio information can be stored in various data formats and into a programmed order that can encompass thousands of individual units. A software-based musical sequencer is a program that composes several sequences of digital audio together from a number of operations. In the case of a MIDI sequencer, audio is stored in the form of a series of events, meaning that it does not record the actual audio, but the sequence of actions taken on each time instance, which note was pressed at what time and for how long. Hardware-based musical sequencers are generally lightweight and portable. Modern sequencers are frequently in the form of a keyboard and can help in controlling and composing music out of virtual instruments. A very well-known sample-based composition today is Steve Reich's Different Trains, a three-movement piece for string quartet and tape from 1988. Its original release was performed by the Kronos Quartet and won the Grammy Award for Best Classical Contemporary Composition in 1989. The initiative of conceiving the work was Reich's train journeys between New York and Los Angeles during World War II to visit his parents, who had separated. Years later, he pondered the fact that, as a Jew, had he been in Europe instead of the United States at that time, he might have been traveling in Holocaust trains. Different Trains was a novel experiment using pre-recorded string quartet tracks against the live one and recorded speech as a sampled source for melodies. The recorded speech that forms the basis for Different Trains is taken from interviews with people in the United States and Europe about the years leading up to, during, and immediately after World War II. Reich created this work by transferring his speech recordings into a digital sampling keyboard, actually a Casio FZ1, and the samples that resolve into musical phrases of approximate pitch and contour determine the music's tempos and tonal modulations. This was important in order the live string quartet to coordinate with the sampler material. Sampling was widely disseminated in popular, commercial, art and experimental music. For example, plunderphonics is a term to describe any music made by taking one or more existing audio recordings and altering them in some way to make a new composition. Coined by composer John Oswald in 1985, plunderphonics can be considered a form of sound collage. Oswald has described it as a referential and self-conscious practice which interrogates notions of originality and identity. However, such a practice has provoked issues of copyright infringement that has led to legal actions by other artists. Although the concept of plunderphonics is seemingly broad, in practice there are many common themes used in what is normally called plunderphonic music. This includes heavy sampling of educational films of the 1950s, news reports, radio shows, or anything with trained vocal announcers. The process of sampling other sources is found in various genres, notably in hip-hop music, but in plunderphonic works the sampled material is often the only sound used, of course manipulated. On the other hand, some plunderphonic artists use their work to protest against what they consider to be overly restrictive copyright laws, while others claim their use of other artists' materials falls under the fair use doctrine. New and more experimental possibilities in plunderphonics projects are permitted by data flow programming languages such as Pure Data and Max MSP, allowing the artist to even realize true aleatory works which will sound differently each time the listener executes the algorithm. Today, there are also several web-based plunderphonics projects like the Droplift project, Dictionaraoki, and Vaporwave. The development of MIDI, sampler, and sequencer, the dissemination of audio technology through personal computers and affordable software, and sophisticated evolution like computer-assisted real-time electronic composition, often used in performance as a basis for written elaboration, or other machines like the electronic gloves, who complement the sounds of live performance with computer-controlled modifications initiated by the performance movements, all seem to compete with old Western habits like notation and pencil and paper composition. An interesting example of such evolutions is a new type of orchestra called the laptop orchestra, a chamber music ensemble consisting mainly of laptop computers. Such digital computing music ensembles are primarily education-based, for example, the Princeton and Stanford laptop orchestras founded by the Chinese-American musician, computer scientist, designer, author and professor Ji Wang. This assumption is vital in comprehending the coming of a new era of orality, where notation would not be a prerequisite neither in the conception and creation nor in dissemination of music. This time, the reproduction and perseverance of music material is possible not through oral tradition as in pre-literate times, but through digital media via computer, via synthesizer, or via MIDI. When a large number of composers will work that way, then a post-literate era will have arrived. To quote Richard Ruskin's prediction, the availability of technologies that can circumvent notation in the production of complex composed music may eventually render musical literacy, like knowledge of ancient scripts, superfluous to all but scholars. This presumption may seem exceedingly alarming in the eyes of today's music lovers, students, performers, aspiring composers and theorists. Undoubtedly, it shows the predominance of electroacoustic music and digital media technology in literally every aspect of music activity today, even the ways we listen to music. Jonathan Kramer had already remarked in 1988, radios, records, and tapes allow the listener to enter and exit a composition at will. An overriding progression from beginning to end may or may not be in the music, but the listener is not captive to that completeness. We all spin the dial. Is such a remark effective and valid today? Let's just replace radios, records, and tapes with the internet, the MP3, and YouTube, and I believe we'll all agree.